I have undeniable proof that Donald Trump is winning the election in 2024. Make sure to hit the like button and to subscribe. If you want to see more content just like this, we're going to be going over a historical election model that I've created that can help me predict almost every single election. When we go back, we track the polling, the presidential approval, the party, what support they have nationwide in terms of the number one issue and how they can handle it, economic confidence, national confidence, as well as the approval rating of the party that wins or loses, the party ID of either party, as well as the prosperous rating. So depending on what kind of basically if they're saying, oh, okay, which party can keep you more prosperous, whoever has that rating, if the winning party gets it, we put it in here. The losing party's columns are right here. So when you go ahead and you average out everything and you plug in everything, you can see the average composite score going down is about roughly 48%. That's the composite score on average for somebody that's winning the election. The losing party composite score on average is 42. Right now, it is 54. It is currently 54 right now. It is currently a 54 point score for the Republican. And right now, the Democrat Party has a composite score of 40. That is a horrible sign. Now, 2000 was an anomaly, and you could see that right about here, you do have something pretty interesting where if you were to remove that, the party that wins tends to get around 49% of a composite score. The losing party gets around 41. But what's fairly fascinating about this, which I think is very, very interesting. Yeah, the 2000 is a pretty big anomaly. Even like Alan Lichtman couldn't even get that election correct, which is very, very strange. But when you look at this right now, I mean, Donald Trump, that composite score is amazing because look at the last time the score was that high was 2008 when it was at 58% for Obama's party, the Democrats. And you see that the last time this score was around anywhere near this, around 40, you get roughly give or take 42 here in 2020. That was like one of the worst scores in quite a while for an incumbent party, and they barely lost the election. And so right now, when you look at that composite score, I mean, that's just absolutely abysmal for Kamala Harris, and it's a 14-point margin. So Republicans have a pretty good composite score, and you'll notice the party that tends to win the White House on average gets 49% of the popular vote, and the losing party on average tends to get 45%. Funny enough, these are the individual vote shares that we currently have for Trump as the winner and Kamala as the loser. So I find that pretty fascinating that those are lining up, and this, winning party on average, this is sort of lining up with what we have right now, which is kind of hilarious. And right now, the composite score average margin for the winning party is about 5 points. So more than likely, if you're up by over 5 in your margin, more than likely the party that's up, if they're up by over 5 points in their composite score, they will effectively be winning the presidential election. And Donald Trump's party, the Republicans, are up by 14. Now you see here that the electoral vote on average outperforms the composite score by 279 electoral college votes, and we see here the losing party, give or take, the composite score tends to, or the electoral votes outperform the composite score by around 42. And so what's pretty fascinating is we see right here kind of baselines for the winning and the losing party, which actually makes sense because if you're going to be the winner, you're going to have a minimum of over 270. And if you're the loser, you should probably have a pretty low floor. So what's pretty fascinating is I've basically constructed two different toss-up maps based on that. And so when looking at Donald Trump's winning scenario, you see he's at 278 and he's really close to the 279. You could technically give him Nebraska second to fill that in, but the polling data there, Kamala Harris is currently ahead in Nebraska second in the polling. So you see here that a bunch of states like Colorado, New Mexico, Minnesota, New Jersey, Virginia. You have a lot of states up for grabs for Donald Trump. And what's fascinating is that usually when the winning candidate tends to win, the election, they tend to win all the swing states as well for the most part. And so that's what you're kind of seeing here. Donald Trump kind of has a little bit of a baseline with Wisconsin, and then from there, he kind of takes all of this. And if you were to give Kamala the win based on the model, because you technically could, Bush won with a -14 margin composite score. The problem is right now Kamala Harris is down in the North Carolina aggregate, down in the Georgia aggregate, and is down in the Texas aggregate. She's narrowly up in the Wisconsin aggregate. And if she loses the one in the Wisconsin aggregate, she's only going to be up 277. So at that point, it seems like her ultimate best case scenario, based on given current polling, would be 287, which I think is very, very interesting. And these are states where either the polling tends to underestimate Republicans or holds pretty steady. And so it's even a possibility that, Wisconsin usually missing pretty badly. Kamala Harris's best case scenario could be 277. Looking at Donald Trump's case, the Michigan polling underestimates him, so does Pennsylvania. Virginia does, but it's not enough to give him the win. Neither would Colorado, neither would New Mexico. Minnesota, there technically is a inside shot into getting in there. Looking at Nebraska's second, the polling usually tends to be in line with what it is, so we'll give it to the Democrats, Maine at large. The same exact thing. So you could technically put these in the Democrat column, including New Jersey. And Minnesota, you could do the same thing. So it seems like the most likely outcome for Trump, based on this, would be 312 electoral votes to Kamala Harris's 226, but anything is necessarily possible. And since Donald Trump does have a pretty large composite score lead, when you actually look at this, because really, for example, this is the interesting part, right? Like if his composite score lead was 1 or 2 or 3, you'd say, okay, more than likely he picks off Pennsylvania or Michigan and he calls it a day. But if we look at the two elections where the lead was super big, including 2008, this was the worst for any performing incumbent party, a 26-point margin for the winning party, or a 26-point net loss for the incumbent party. Obama went on to win 365. But here's the problem. In 1992, when the Democrats won by 14 points in their composite score, they won 370. So that's pretty fascinating. Very, very fascinating stuff. 370 right there. Also, I want to point out something, guys. Look at 2000 to 2004. Look at that. Two very competitive elections. 2008 to 2012, they were modest victory elections. And now in 2016 to 2020, we've had, again, two competitive elections. And so if the pattern were to hypothetically continue, 2024 would have to be a landslide win or a modest victory in the Electoral College, seemingly if that pattern would continue since the start of the century, essentially. So it'll be interesting to see if that pattern holds up. And even you see here, look, two close elections. And look at the previous two. You have two very big wins. So you have two very big wins, two close ones, two big wins, two close ones. So the pattern's even been going on since 1992. And so in 2020, afterwards, it's like, well, we already had the two close ones again. So what's going to happen in 2028 or 2024? It seems like we may be headed for pretty decent GOP victories, depending on how the economic metrics go and how certain things go. But it seems like the winning party usually gets over 300, which would insinuate that Donald Trump essentially is leading all of the battlegrounds on average. If he is the favorite in the composite score by 14 points, he could essentially be guaranteed his floor of 312 electoral college votes. Usually, if you're leading in the composite score by quite a bit, you'll tend to get over 300 electoral votes, almost guaranteed. I would even say Minnesota could even fall in the column based on how much he's leading Kamala Harris's current composite score. And we'll kind of break it down because it is kind of fascinating. Because when you look at this, right, when you look at the composite scores, you see the Republican national polling 47%. There is no Republican incumbent, so we kind of leave that blank. But technically, his approval rating is like 46%. And so if you were to factor that in, that brings it down to 53. So hypothetically, let's say, his approval rating 46%. Republican issues, they got about 46% of the country. Economic confidence, it's minus 28 nationwide. So we find what would be the hypothetical vote shares for each party. So technically the Republicans got 64. National confidence is minus 22. So that basically puts them at 78%. Looking at the Republican approval rating, that actually puts them at about 43%. So that is very interesting. Even if you got rid of these economic factors, right? Let's say you got rid of those economic factors. Even then, you see the Republican lead by 12. So again, very interesting to think about. Republican Party approval rating 43% according to Gallup. Republican Party party ID 48%. And Republican Party prosperous rating 54. And looking at the Democrat, you got Kamala Harris at 49, but the incumbent president is at 41. Dem party issues at 41. Dem economic confidence all the way down at 36. The national confidence all the way down at 22, which is a historical low. It hasn't been that low since 1992 when Bill Clinton essentially clobbered George H.W. Bush. Democrat approval in their party, roughly give or take, is at about 42%. You saw here in 2016, you saw the losing party actually had a 42% approval rating. So right now, Democrats nationwide have the same approval rating as they did in 2016 when they lost the election. Looking at party ID, when you lose the election, you see in 2016 when Democrats lost, they were at around 46, and you see that right there, 45%. And looking at the prosperous rating in 2016, when Democrats lost, they were at 42. Now they are at 44. So it's very interesting. All of the Democrat indicators line up with the 2016 loss when Donald Trump beat Hillary Clinton. And all of the Republican wins look somewhat similar. You can actually see here, for example, if you look at the winning party issue, Republican in 2016, 42. So now it's actually outperforming that. So the Republicans are outperforming 2016. If you look at the economic indicator, it's way higher for the Republicans. You can see national confidence is way higher. Republican Party approval rating right now is at about 43%. They weren't the incumbent, so they weren't really included. Looking at party ID, when they won the election, it was at 43. Now they're at 48. So that's another overperformance. And the same thing, winning party prosperous rating, 46% give or take for Republicans. Now it's 54. And Donald Trump is polling roughly almost 4 points better than what he was in his national vote share, give or take. So again, very, very, very interesting stuff, guys. All of these indicators point to Trump winning by a decent victory to a pretty big win. It's a modest electoral college win all the way up to a pretty decent victory in the electoral college based on what we have right now. And so if you guys did enjoy this video, make sure to go ahead and hit the like button and to subscribe if you want more content just like this. And I will see you guys in the next video.